Hi all, Rick here, with a video looking into one of those ships from beta canon that seems to fit in really well with established vessels, partly for its look but also the overall shape and styling, placing it into a design language of the lost era of Trek, the Vesper Class. The original class was created for Star Trek Online as one of several alternative styles of Constitution class that you could play with, alongside the Excalibur and the refit. However, the vessel, initially simply an alternate skin, was overhauled in 2022 to better fit into canon as a Lost Era attempt at recreating the Excelsior's abilities in a Constitution class frame. So, the Vesper was conceived from two factors. The Constitution class was regarded as one of the most successful vessel styles to come from Starfleet thanks to its variability, ease of overhauls, and implementation of new technologies. This kept it at the top of the line for many years beyond its implementation, with the major refit program culminating in the Mark II. However, everything has its time, and eventually even the upgraded Constitution classes were being eclipsed by ships like the Excelsior, which were built from the start with new developments in mind. However, efforts were made to reprise and sustain the Constitution class during the early 24th century, though not by overhauling existing vessels, but by basically building a new starship based on the principles of the Constitution class. The Vesper is a result of that philosophy, by taking most of its cues from the Excelsior and attempting to reduce the profile into a more Connie-style frame. We don't have an exact date of manufacture, but it was said to be concurrent with the Ambassador class program, so we can assume that it came from the missing Lost Era of Starfleet. I suspect the idea of the Vesper was greenlit as the Excelsior was considered the new and best ship of the time, and Starfleet did not initially realise the longevity of that class. So, the Vesper was seen as an alternative to take on the same missions without risking the newer poster ship of the Federation or the even newer Ambassador class in the works. The prototype was the USS Vesper NX-1010-9, later NCC. Several other vessels were constructed, but in total not that many. This was because the line, while functional and commissioned, was considered essentially unneeded. While it fulfilled the role of the Excelsior, the eventual ubiquity of that class made the Vesper's mission profile irrelevant. When you could simply send an Excelsior or Miranda, this ship has nothing going for it that Starfleet did not already have a ship for. But nonetheless, it was a functional vessel class, so there was no real reason to decommission the line or anything drastic. In the following decade, the Ambassador class project pumped out more starships, which basically relegated the Excelsior to the roles that the Vesper would have occupied even further. So, in sticking with the scaled down nature of the vessel, it had a crew of 400, which is around the same as the launch era Constitution before that was scaled down to 203. Its maximum warp factor was listed as 9.9 by the 2360s, although I suspect it was closer to that of the original Excelsior at the time of its launch, which would have been around 9.2. The nacelles were a unique design, although clearly inspired by the Excelsior, the result of an attempt to compress the technologies into the frame of a Constitution, and it had the same warp coils. At the rear of the saucer were two impulse engines. It was one of the first classes to receive the strip phasers in place of the turrets favoured by older vessels. The benefit of these was that each point in the strip could add its charge to the next emitter, increasing the yield while also providing a wider field of fire than a single point. It also reduced the needed points across the hull that were dedicated to turrets and the associated internal tech behind the phaser banks. It featured 11 Mark II phaser strips. I guess the Mark Is were the functional prototype. 6 around the saucer, 4 on the rear, upper and lower, and 1 on the underside. They were noticeably chunkier than latter strips. It carried 2 sets of dual beam cannons on the front of the saucer and 3 torpedo tubes, 1 rear and 2 forward. It was coated with the relatively new Deburnium hull alloy and equipped with standard deflector shielding. Thanks to the scaling down, however, there was a major trade-off in auxiliary craft capacity, with only 1 small shuttle bay at the rear. It looks to be barely a deck tall. In terms of sensor systems, it maintained the 2 sensor domes that were present on the Constitution class and a hallmark of this era of design. Overall, the Vesper was a functional idea at bringing the developments of the Excelsior down to something that resembled the Constitution class, but it faced an uphill battle. The design failed to really capture anything new or innovative, which could have worked to its favour as a stepping stone into the role to take over from other ships. However, the longevity of the Miranda and the Excelsior classes made this irrelevant, as anything the Vesper could do, these could also achieve. And the Vesper, while trialling new technologies like phaser strips and new armour, was developed alongside the Ambassador class, and that would soon emerge as the Federation's New Age exploration vessel, eclipsing the Vesper in every field. So while a prototype was created and several others of the line followed from it, the Vesper never really caught on, as it had no true role to fulfill beyond insert standard default mission. And Starfleet has plenty of ships for those roles. Had either the Ambassador or the Excelsior not been so good, then maybe we would have seen more of it, but as it stands it falls into the archives as a respectable starship. I really do like the design though. Thanks for watching this breakdown on the Vesper Class starship. Until the next one, I've been Rick, thanks again, and goodbye.